Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining in. In the early days of the web, reselling bulletin boards and email listservs were vibrant centers of a reuse movement that was crystallized with the rise of Craigslist and, most prominently, eBay. Our guest today is Renee Morin. She is Chief Sustainability Officer at eBay, and she returns to the show to discuss the findings of this year's eBay Recommerce Report, a survey of more than 11,000 small sellers on the marketplace. This is the third Recommerce survey by eBay, and 90% of this year's respondents said they resold items they previously purchased, new or used. eBay estimates that sellers avoided sending about 73,000 tons of usable products to landfills, which contributed to reducing carbon emissions by 1.6 million tons. But perhaps most intriguing is that eBay sellers around the world, many of whom use eBay to generate much needed spending money, earned $4.6 billion last year. Now, that means eBay resellers generated about the same revenue as TikTok in 2021. Those are individuals, not a big company. 42% of the people surveyed said that they rely on eBay to earn extra cash, and 56% said that they participate because it's less expensive, while 93% reported that they believe it is important to shop used so that they do better for the environment. Renee, who also talked with us last April, joins me to discuss the report and eBay's sustainability goals and progress. We'll include links to the report with the podcast article, and you can learn more about eBay's sustainability and social impact at www.ebayinc. That's all one word, no space, no dash, ebayinc.com/impact. Welcome back, Renee. It's good to have you on the show again. How are you today?
I'm great, Mitch. A little rainy outside, but good all around.
Well, it's not like California hasn't had enough rain, is it?
I'm actually in DC, so we're getting a little bit, but nothing like California.
That's right. I'm sorry, but
no worries.
eBay, by extension, is getting plenty of rain.
Plenty, yes. My thoughts go out to my colleagues.
Well, as compared to having a drought, not the worst thing. Let me start off by asking to define what recommerce is. How's that distinct from the other sales on eBay? Because you're very particular about this being different than other parts of the transactional environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So recommerce is the selling and buying of pre-owned and refurbished goods. So these goods have already had a previous life, these products. And so that's part of the recommerce, right? So they've been sold once and they're going to be sold again, most likely for both environmental and economic benefits.
And that's very important that we extend the life of a product, because the embodied carbon, the carbon involved in making it, is amortized over a longer period of time. In other words, it's kept out of the environment. So it's fascinating that people on eBay actually identify that way. The sustainability is important to them. What percentage of all eBay sales are recommerce?
Yeah, so as of late, over a third of our sales are part of recommerce. So we also have new products online and some non-new and in season, as we call it in the industry, but a third are part of recommerce. They're used or refurbished, which is great.
Now, it's interesting. The other thing that people described as recommerce was more profitable for them, according to a lot of the respondents. People don't typically associate used products with higher profitability. What's the key to being a profitable recommerce seller on eBay?
Yeah, I think there's probably multiple factors. And for the ones that are citing specifically profitability, we're thinking those are probably ones that are selling very unique items, collectibles. We've got a bunch of high value buyers, enthusiast buyers, if you will, on eBay who are looking for that very special item. So if it's a collectible, it's been around, right? So it's also part of recommerce in that sense. And those buyers are generally willing to pay a little bit more for that special, unique find. So that could be part of the story there.
So do recommerce people go out and basically hunt in their local markets, their antique stores and so forth, for stuff that they see as valuable? Or is this primarily products that they've been using and decided they want to get rid of?
It's both, really. Our study last year, where we surveyed our buyers, we found, I think, and hopefully I'm not being misquoted here, about $4,000 in the US of goods in our homes that we could sell. Right.
Mhm.
So there's that business model, as well as the intentional entrepreneur who is looking to sell a specific type of good. I visited a gentleman in Virginia. Like I said, I'm in DC, one
Mhm.
of our sellers who started out selling hard drives. And now he's got a bunch of hard drives that he's refurbishing and selling from his basement. So, there's a lot of different business models out there. I think that's what's so unique about eBay is it is a very equitable, attainable platform on which anybody can get on board and start selling and making some money.
Now, the other interesting area for me was the generational differences. Gen Z actually reported a slightly lower commitment to sustainability than millennials, yet they're also more likely than all the sellers on eBay to value it as a source of equitable sustainability outcomes. How did the different generations express their concerns about the environment in the response to the survey?
Well, overall, the primary environmental benefit was cited was keeping items out of landfill, so reducing waste, and that was across the board. There's a little bit of difference between Gen Z and millennials. It could be how they interpret the word sustainability potentially,
Mm.
but I think really the main point there is almost 40% of the Gen Zs and millennials pointed to sustainability, whereas older generations, boomers, et cetera, that's almost 25%. So they weren't really thinking about sustainability as much as our younger generations.
Uh, and that also represents what seems to be in the data that Gen Z has a very different relationship to stuff and to the economy than boomers, than older people.
Hmm.
They cite saving money by buying used 14% more of the time than the other generations, and they also put a heavy emphasis on the value of extra cash. It sounds like they're not earning as much elsewhere. How does eBay see its audience and the focus on recommerce changing as new generations come into the economy, particularly Gen Alpha?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think back to when I was where Gen Zs and millennials are now, my late teens, early 20s, and scraping together change to fill up my gas tank and or to put $2 in my gas tank to get to work versus, I'm older now and maybe our relationship with money has changed so that the younger generations still really appreciate that extra cash, which is, in my mind, this is me supposing, probably why they're citing it more than older generations. And in terms of Gen Alpha, they can't sell on eBay just yet. You
Right.
have to be 18.
They're 11 or 12 now.
Yeah, they're a little young, but they might be asking their parents to help them buy stuff or doing it on their own. But participating in recommerce, I think a lot of the stigma has gone away.
Mhm.
And as well, you can't turn on the television. We just talked about California a minute ago without seeing something related to climate change. So there's a lot of education and knowledge, I think, that's being shared with younger generations across social media, across typical media. That brings these issues top of mind. And then once that relationship to recommerce is also understood, it makes it even more of a potential, I think, for future generations to continue. This trend's been around for a long time. We're over 25 years old and we were founded on recommerce.
Well, that really suggests that where we're moving is an environment where the circular economy, where the idea of things going round and round rather than to the landfill at end of life, is normal and accepted, even expected. Do you Does that change how eBay thinks about its role in creating confidence in the marketplace? So, for instance, a lot of your buyers, 65% of them, said they value the eBay refurbishment program.
Mhm.
Is that are there new value-added services that eBay can provide to make people even more confident about participating?
I mean, I think the community and the trusted marketplace of eBay is one of our cornerstones.
Mhm.
So we're always looking at ways to show that to both our sellers and our buyers. The refurbished program in particular, I think by having very specific conditions, both the sellers and the buyers understand what that product is, what the condition is. These products are backed by industry leading warranties.
Mhm.
So that's adding to the trust and adding to really, I think, elevating recommerce as well.
Now, is that your warranty, or is that, for instance, an original equipment manufacturer offering a warranty on a refurbished product? Can you tell us a little more about that?
I think I would have to defer to our refurbished team's experts for that one.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, so do you see phone and laptop makers, for instance, coming to you with refurbished inventory, looking to place it on eBay?
So we don't handle inventory, right? So if you are a refurbished manufacturer
Hmm.
or part of our refurbished program, you could be the original manufacturer, or you have to be a manufacturer approved seller
Hmm.
to be part of that program. Um, I think the interesting thing and the great thing about eBay is it's very interfacing with what the buyers are looking for, right? So
Right.
so then if the manufacturer or a refurbished seller who is a vendor approved wants to sell certain things that they know that buyers are looking for, it's a great place to do it.
Do you then envision a future in which there's a lot more refurbishment program product on the site? Is this
We
something?
continue to add, yeah, we continue to add additional sellers to the program. There's criteria that they have to meet. It's not just you sign your name and you're in. And so there's definitely an effort to continue to expand the refurbished program in general.
Into other categories beyond technology?
We already do some in home goods like
Mhm.
blenders and things of that nature. So sure, the sky's the limit, right?
Well, the other limit that we're talking about a lot these days is a lot of economic disruption. Does the recent turbulence in the economy, is it changing eBay sellers' priorities? Are you seeing any macroeconomic effects on your sales environment?
Well, if we go back to the Recommerce study, and thinking,
Hmm.
along that train of thought. So we've seen from the last survey that sellers, I think is around 80%, have either stayed the same or increased their sales of recommerce over the last 6 months. Um, I think that the pandemic itself brought a lot of more people online when we were locked
Hmm.
down in our homes. Um, and through that, additional recommerce activity happened. But again, eBay's been around for over 25 years. We are the pioneers of recommerce, and that ability to get online and make some extra cash and having us be a platform where we can support the economic opportunity for our sellers won't be changing. And I think that's part of the great thing about eBay is through these different economic periods, we're always accessible and attainable in a place where sellers can go to make some extra cash.
Yeah, as I said in the introduction, it's astonishing how much money is being earned. It's about $4.6 billion, which, if you go look at TikTok, for instance, was their revenue in 2021, but that's a company's revenue, and this is distributed across a very large number of people. How many resellers, roughly, do you think you have?
Yeah, so I don't have the exact number of resellers, but a third of our inventory, our GMV, as we say, gross merchandise volume, is recommerce. So I think we can then roughly say, a lot of our sellers online are participating in recommerce.
Well, I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back to continue the conversation. And we are back and talking with eBay's Chief Sustainability Officer, Renee Morin. So, Renee, do you see what's going on now in the economy as the beginning of a long transition, a disruption or inflection point in re-commerce? Is this movement going to become literally an everyday phenomena that we're all familiar with? And what can eBay do to help accelerate that?
I mean, of course, as a sustainability professional, I hope that more and more recommerce becomes part of our economy, our should be circular economy.
Mhm.
I think the economics right now sort of help in a sense, but they're not the primary driver. People want to be able to find unique items online. They want to be able to participate in re-commerce and say that they're helping save items from landfill. So I think that trend is going to continue. Um, and again, this isn't new for eBay. We've been in this business for a long time,
Mhm.
and re-commerce has been part of our business since the beginning. So I wouldn't say necessarily there's an inflection point,
Okay.
but maybe there's additional knowledge is being shared, and with the younger generations that we're seeing participating more in recommerce as well, we can hope for the best.
Do things like authenticity, which you provide an authenticity guarantee about, matter a lot in this environment? Are people looking for the real McCoy when they're trying to shop, or are they happy with stuff that isn't necessarily authentic?
I think it depends. I mean, I don't think people want inauthentic stuff regardless, but the authenticity guarantee for some of our higher end items, I think helps again to place that trust into the transaction in the community. And all that does help then to make a level playing field for used and refurbished goods really being just as good as new. So I think it's all part of that same scenario.
Now, I want to change the conversation a bit. You just mentioned you are the chief sustainability officer, and I want to talk about your sustainability progress to date. I was looking over the last sustainability report, and your scope 1 and 2 emissions have continued to come down each year, which is doing better than a lot of companies. How far are you toward your 2030 goal of reducing emissions, scope 1 and 2 emissions by 90%? Where are you today?
We are about a third of the way there. Our next set of numbers will come out in May, and that will be for 2022. So our eyes on the ball right now. And same for our scope 3. We're about, and that we can get into it more if you want, but also around a third of the way there. And this is based off of a 2019 baseline, just to ground. Yeah.
All right. So scope 3 is definitely something I want to talk about because it accounts for 99% of your emissions.
A whole lot, yeah.
And that's largely due because you use so many different shipping and distribution partners around the world. What progress are you making on being able to completely assess your scope 3 emissions, which has been a challenge for every company we've talked to?
Yeah, absolutely. We just started reporting our scope 3 delivery emissions, I think 3 years ago now. And we started out with just the US. And so each year we're iterating, we're trying to get more real data, if you will, from our carriers. So we interact with them quite a bit, not just in the US, but globally as well, so that we can replace estimates with actual information. So when a carrier makes moves towards electrification of their fleet, that needs to be reflected in the emission factors that they give us so that we can reflect it in our footprint. That's the only way we're going to be able to really show that real progress.
One thing I noticed is that your scope 3 emissions declined 7% last year, or in 2021. What happened? How did that, can you describe what changed?
I think it's a lot more complicated than people think, right? So when we're talking about delivery of a package, both the weight, the distance, as well as the mode of transportation all play into the end emissions from the delivery of that individual package. So it's a combination of maybe a little less distance, maybe a little less weight, as well as some electrification, some good forward progress in terms of reducing emissions from the carriers themselves, all help to create that 7%.
So could you also provide additional information to help people shop more regionally or locally in order to shorten those shipping distances? Is that something that you've thought about providing as a value proposition?
Yeah, and in some of our markets, close to home pickup, that sort of scenario is available. So if someone wants to shop in that way, that option does exist. When I go on eBay to buy something, I purposely don't buy stuff that's super far away. I try to buy it, closer in the US if that same item exists. So I think it's a dual relationship there, both the buyer and the eBay platform itself providing that info.
I envision a day when I might be able to see what the carbon footprint of a shipment will look like when we really do know what scope 3 looks like. Do you think that would be helpful to shoppers? Are they looking for that kind of information?
Some are, yeah. I mean, if we go back to the Gen Z millennial situation, just for recommerce and specifically being sustainability minded, being value conscious, being, mindful of these sorts of inputs. I think that if anything, with AI and everything else going on, more information seems to be better. So I could see that happening.
Now, the other thing that you've made a lot of progress on your adoption of renewable energy. You're at 90% in 2021,
Hmm.
and that was up from 58% in 2018. So lots of progress. What's the stubborn last 10% of electricity use that represents your remaining progress to make?
Yeah, and it's not even stubborn. I would say it's more of a level of focus. So
Okay.
our largest source of emissions and largest consumption of electricity is in the United States. So we focused there first when I came on board
Mhm.
to put multiple virtual power purchase agreements in place. So that's where we're helping to add both wind and solar to the grid itself. That's been part of that progress, and now we're switching gears and looking at our international sites, which are
Mhm.
not as large, to be honest. Right? So we've taken care of a large portion of it within the U.S. itself, and now we need to switch gears and find other solutions for some of our international sites, which are mainly offices, so very one-off situations.
In the U.S., is data center usage or is office usage the primary driver of electricity consumption?
Data center for sure. Yes. About, I want to say 75-80% of our electricity consumption is from data centers.
Now, one of the things that the tech industry has done is create consortia to drive renewable energy purchases and demand for renewable energies, particularly the RE100 program or collaboration.
Mhm.
How's that working to accelerate and make it easier to source green energy over the course of the past few years?
Well, I'm a big fan of RE100 goals. I think REBA, or which was REBA, now SEBA, which is the Clean Energy Buyers Program, is
Mhm.
really more where that coalition is that you speak of.
Mhm.
And we've been a part of that consortium coalition at least 4 or 5 years now. Um, those sorts of bringing together the buyers, bringing together the providers in
Mhm.
one area to exchange information has been invaluable to educate. Not all sustainability professionals have deep knowledge in renewable energy, right? So
Yeah.
it gives us an opportunity to share knowledge amongst our peers, but also I want to say both of the VPPAs, those virtual power purchase agreements I just mentioned,
Mhm.
that we entered into happened because of um, introductions and shaking of hands and speaking to others at these conferences so that we have an aggregation of multiple companies that are now pooling together to make renewable energy purchasing happen.
In addition to the purchasing agreements, are companies in the consortia talking about how to co-invest to drive greater, um, more capacity in renewable
Gotcha.
energy?
Um, I think it depends on the company, honestly, and how big their own footprint is. Some companies have, manufacturing sites where on-site renewables make a lot of sense. So they're actually putting solar there.
Mhm.
eBay is more of a tech company, right? We've got a few data centers and a lot of offices, so a different scenario in terms of just space. But I think the opportunities for investment are continuing to expand. There weren't virtual power purchase agreements 10, 15 years ago for corporates to actually, and that's a different sort of investment, right?
Mhm.
We're helping to back those programs by saying that we will make sure that the the project stays whole, basically. So I think the investment opportunities are there, and the products are becoming more and more creative.
Well, certainly the availability of solar and wind generation is rising. Do you see sufficient investment going forward to support the industry becoming truly renewable, uh, as compared to continuing to use credits to offset locally generated fossil fuels? Are we making the progress we need to make as a society? Is really the question.
I think we're getting there. I mean, it's a really complex issue, and it's not just about corporations being willing to ante up, if you will. There's a governmental structure in place. There's infrastructure. There's the grid itself that needs a facelift. So I think we're all headed in that right direction. But there's going to take a lot of investment from different parts of our economy, not just corporations, but
Yeah.
in tandem with government agencies and other inputs as well.
Yeah, I think ultimately even the consumer at home demanding the access to renewable
Sure.
is the last mile that we need to go, but it's going to be a while. Now, another area where you've made a lot of progress, but actually had a little bit of a fallback in 2021, was around waste diversion, avoiding sending stuff to landfill. And it was
Mhm.
not a small or not a large change. You went from 97.5 to 96.9. So,
Yeah, very small.
but I was curious, what caused that? Was it the exit from lockdown and the fact that people came back to the office and they lost some good habits in terms of waste avoidance?
No, to be honest, so that data is 2021. We're still sort of working from home at that point. When it comes to waste diversion, it depends on what the local programs are. And so most of that data that we're talking about right now is from our headquarters in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I can speculate it's probably has to do more with a retrofit or a refurbishment or a renovation of a building. And then there just
Okay.
happens to be, in some cases, certain materials from building construction that aren't divertible, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's in
Now I
the
get why
weeds
it's a
of the,
small change.
what's that?
Now I get why it's a small change.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, our habits have not changed for sure. And we're always looking to divert as much as we can.
Now, you've been in the role for a long time. What is your advice to someone stepping into being this chief sustainability officer for a company? What would you suggest that they tackle in their first 90 days?
90 days. Networking for sure. But
Mhm.
I think stepping back and really understanding what the industry is of the company in which you join, because that has a whole lot to do with the focus of your program.
Mhm.
Um, we're not an ag company, for instance, so we're not going to be far up into our supply chain talking to palm oil
Right.
producers, for instance, right? Which is a very different scenario and needs a lot of attention if you're an ad company. So I think understanding your industry, networking as much as you can, and finding those champions within the company
Mhm.
to help along with your progress is a lot of the advice that I would give.
Now, that internal networking is really critical to putting the actual practices in place that you then will talk to the world about. How do you activate eBay's internal awareness of waste reduction, power usage, and power efficiency? What kind of stuff do you do? Are there green teams talking all the time?
We have what are called change makers now, and they were green teams once upon a time. And so they come up with more local programs around environmental or social activities. Um, we have partnerships between our departments, right? So we work really closely with facilities and understanding, hey, if we're going to invest in something, maybe LED lighting should be next as opposed to something else. So having those conversations continuously, as well as with our core technology team, which is the folks who run our data centers. They all are aware of these goals that we have that are public, and it takes all of us making progress to get towards being successful in achieving those goals. So a lot of conversations, a lot of socialization, and even our CEO and CFO talk about ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues in each of our quarterly earnings. So we're trying to socialize it as much as we can.
Is compensation at the company now tied to sustainability performance for senior executives?
It is, I believe, for our CEO, but I can't get into the specifics of it.
Sure. But is that important to actually getting an authentic change? Speaking of authenticity, since we were before, is it important that everybody be staked to the environmental progress?
I think it's an added incentive.
Okay.
Companies like eBay, a lot of others have been making progress before the conversation around tying ESG metrics to compensation was
Mhm.
as hot of an item as it is currently. But we were already doing good stuff. So I think again, it's just like an added layer of incentivization to make sure that we're all headed in the right direction.
So, what's ahead for eBay in terms of its continued sustainability efforts, and how can folks follow along with what you're doing?
Thanks for that. So we're really going to be focusing on our transportation footprint. We're going to
Mhm.
be exploring how we can get more information out to our consumers, both our sellers and our buyers around sustainability. And then in terms of where you can look up what's going on and how we're doing, we on our eBay.inc site have a special sort of microsite dedicated to our impact work, which is basically a lot of the stuff we've been talking about today, including Recommerce, sustainable commerce, trusted marketplace, all those good things.
Well, Renee, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's great to chat with you again.
Well, I look forward to next year's Recommerce Report. Come back and talk with us.
Sounds good.
We've been speaking with Renee Morin. She's Chief Sustainability Officer at eBay. You can find the Recommerce Report and eBay Sustainability Reporting at ebayinc.com. eBay Inc. is all one word, no space, no dash. ebayinc.com/impact. And that's just the start of the journey. You can find all sorts of information there. The sustainability transition is redefining our values and habits. It's reshaping our language. Thrift shopping has become recommerce. And if generational influences continue the trend towards circular, reuse-oriented values, I think we're going to soon be thinking of recommerce as just simply shopping. That change will keep products in use and out of landfills, reducing the need for additional mining, processing, manufacturing, and shipping new products halfway around the world to keep up with demand. The stuff that's already in some regional markets can handle that demand. Combine that with improved recycling services and a repair infrastructure, and humans could actually reduce our environmental footprint by as much as 30%, according to a recent study by Circle Economy and Deloitte. In fact, you can listen to our recent conversation with Deloitte's Navasin Gupta to learn more about the potential benefits of comprehensive circularity. As Renee said, eBay does not currently handle inventory, and there's $600 billion in office furniture, laboratory supplies, and commercial equipment that, for example, our recent guest, Gary Cooper Jr. of Reaply, is working to put back into useful circulation. So look, folks, recommerce is breaking out all over, and you can follow the story here on Sustainability in Your Ear. I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast or any of the other interviews that we've produced on Sustainability in Your Ear. Please take a few minutes to write a review on your favorite podcast platform to help your neighbors find us. You folks are the amplifiers that spread more ideas so we can have a less wasteful world. Tell your friends, family, your coworkers that they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other fine purveyors of podcast goodness that you may prefer. Thank you so much for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Earth911, and we'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.